James Talarico. James, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me again.
So there is an announcement that you wanted to offer up here, so floor is yours.
Well, this show and this channel has been with me at every step in the fight here in Texas, including this summer when my colleagues and I broke quorum to shine a national spotlight on Trump's redistricting power grab. And so I wanted to come on here with you and with your listeners to share that today I'm announcing my candidacy for U.S. Senate here in Texas. And I know it's going to be an uphill battle, but we desperately need to flip this state so that we can save this country in 2026. And I hope that your viewers can help us in this endeavor because it's of national importance.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and letting us know. Congratulations on the decision. Now, a lot of people are going to see this, and they're going to see that we've had great candidates in the past. We had Beto who ran in 2018. We've had other candidates who've run since then statewide. And so, How will this cycle? How will this race be different?
Yeah, it's a great question. The data is unmistakable. Texas elections statewide have gotten more competitive over the years, not less competitive. When I was growing up here in Texas, Republicans won statewide elections by 25, 30 points. Now they consistently only win by single digits. And I'm hopeful that in another Trump midterm, we're going to see a very competitive race at the top of the ticket for this U.S. Senate seat. The last time we had a Trump midterm in 2018, Beto O'Rourke, my friend, your friend, came within 2.5 points of beating a Republican senator. The next year, when Trump was running for reelection, he only won Texas by 5 points. And so, given the backlash that's growing across our state and across this country, I'm confident that with the right campaign, with the right effort, we can flip this seat and be able to have a Senate majority in 2027.
As we head toward 2026, obviously the goal here is to build up a coalition of folks that look very much different from what we saw in 2024 and beyond, because those coalitions weren't big enough to garner Democrats' majorities. And so, how are you thinking about that as you head toward this election cycle? What have your conversations with people shown that might, offer up some insight into that coalition that you're building?
Well, you're exactly right. We have got to grow our coalition. We've got to be adding, not subtracting. And that means reaching out to people who aren't with us yet and reaching out to folks who may not agree with us on 100% of the issues. I've often said that if you want a small, pure, insular group, then you should start a social club. But a political party is designed to win political power, win elections, so that we can make people's lives better. That's the whole purpose of politics. And the Democratic Party is not winning elections. It's not winning political power. And it's allowing the Texans that I serve, all 30 million of them, to suffer under Republican extremism. And so we've got to do things very differently. It's why I went on Joe Rogan this summer. It's why we broke quorum to show that fighting spirit that people haven't seen from the Democratic Party in quite a while. And, I know how to do this because I first got elected in 2018 by flipping a Trump district. It was a district that no one thought was winnable. It wasn't targeted by the Democratic Party. The media wasn't focused on it. But I ran an aggressive, unconventional campaign where at one point I walked the entire length of my district, 25 miles in the Texas heat, and I held town halls along that walk. I live streamed the whole thing on social media. I knocked on thousands of doors, Democrats, independents, and Republicans alike. And I eventually won that district with 51% of the vote on election night. And so I want to take that playbook of running aggressively, of using unorthodox campaign tactics to be able to finally break through in Texas, which again is necessary because if you take these 2030 reapportionment estimates seriously, Democrats have got to win Texas if we hope to have a majority in this country in the United States Senate or hold the White House. And that work needs to start now. And I hope this campaign can lead us in that direction.
Can you talk about some instances where you've spoken to folks who may have voted for Trump in the past, may have voted for Ted Cruz or John Cornyn in the past, and kind of like what you've learned from those conversations, or even if those people have been open to supporting your candidacy, even though they might have identified as a Republican for their entire lives.
Well, after I went on Joe Rogan's show this summer, I was flooded with calls and DMs and messages. And so many of those messages started with the same sentence, which was, I've never messaged a politician before.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great sign because if we're going to win in a place like Texas, we've got to change the electorate. We've got to bring people into the process who haven't voted before, or maybe they've voted sporadically, maybe they've voted for Republicans, and now they are, because of what's happening nationally and what's happening here in Texas, they are open to an alternative. And honestly, the more I've done this, the more I've realized that politics is not really left versus right. It's much more top versus bottom. And so many of the people who voted for Donald Trump here in Texas were doing it because he promised he would lower costs, that he would make this economy work for them. But now that he's in office, he's using his position of public trust to enrich himself and enrich his donors and enrich his billionaire friends. So these voters are suddenly realizing that they've been conned, and they are looking for a candidate who they can trust, a candidate who's going to shoot straight with them, and a candidate who has a vision about empowering working people in Texas and across the country. That's exactly what I've done throughout my career, and it's what I'm going to do in this race. And I think we're going to surprise a lot of people here in Texas.
Well, your eventual opponent, whether it's Ken Paxton or John Cornyn on the Republican side, they're going to come out and they're going to say the same thing. They're going to say that we're here because we care about working people, in very much the same way that Trump came out and said that he cared about working people, and he invoked the cost of individual eggs. That's how granular he was looking at the ways in which high costs affected regular people. He talked about groceries, about housing, about rent, and of course it was all, to your exact point, a bill of goods. He's done this whole populist shtick before. His first term, he ran on an infrastructure law that never materialized, a healthcare plan that was cheaper and more comprehensive that never materialized, a middle class tax cut that never materialized. So we've been here before. That doesn't stop these Republicans from continuing to say things that sound good, and sadly, it hasn't stopped a lot of members of their base from believing it every time they're presented with these talking points, even though they're completely baseless. And so, how do you push back when you've got your eventual opponents who are going to say the same thing? In a world where there isn't much shame, and even though you can point out that they're doing the opposite of what they're saying, it doesn't seem to stop them.
Well, I'll say a few things. One is that the advantage of having Donald Trump in the White House is that people can see for themselves the results of Republican extremism. They don't have to believe me. They don't have to believe you. They just have to believe their own eyes. And I think that's a huge advantage that we didn't have last year. And we didn't have it in 2022. We did have it in 2018 and in 2020 when Trump was in the White House.
Yeah.
And both of those elections, the top of the ticket, the top of the ballot here in Texas was incredibly close and incredibly competitive. And so if past is prologue, I think we're about to see a true backlash to Trumpian politics and Republican extremism going into this next election.
Can you talk a little bit about what your candidacy represents in terms of the generational change that is so desperately needed on the left?
Yeah, I think this country is desperate for a new generation of leaders to step up. They want new blood in our politics. They want fresh perspectives. They want real energy and vitality, which we haven't seen in the Democratic Party in quite a while. And I'm hopeful that me stepping up to run for the Senate seat and other talented members of my generation stepping up to run for office at every level is going to reinvigorate this party. But I will say we're going to need your listeners' help because young people, we have the energy, we've got the social media savvy, we've got the ability to connect with people, but oftentimes we don't have the old school network of big high dollar donors that the more senior politicians have. So we're going to need to rely on grassroots donations of people giving 5, 10, $25. That's how young people are going to win. We don't have a ton of rich friends like our more senior colleagues do. And so if you want young people to run, if you want young people to lead, you've got to step up and support us. And ultimately, it's going to be people power who get us over the finish line.
And by the way, before we even move on, for those who are looking to donate and support James's campaign, I'm going to put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description. So if you're considering giving, do so now, do so early, because this is when it's going to make a bigger difference. Republicans are going to try relentlessly to define him before he has the opportunity to define himself. So giving these donations now, giving them early, will give him the opportunity to define himself in the eyes of these Texas voters, which is going to be so important.
And I'll just add,
Yeah.
as your viewers may know from my appearances on this show, I've made it a habit to call out the billionaire mega donors who run our politics and increasingly run our economy, run our media. I've named names, and I've picked fights with those billionaire mega donors, and so they're going to come after me pretty hard. And I am the only Texas lawmaker in the state legislature who has never taken a dime of corporate PAC money. And I'm continuing that policy in the Senate run. I won't be taking any money from any corporate PACs. And so I'm going to rely on the people. They're the ones who got me this far. And I believe they're going to be the ones that are going to transform this state and this country. And so, yes, I'm relying on people and on grassroots donations in this campaign.
James, can you talk about why it's so important that Democrats stay competitive in the Senate this year as we look toward the 2026 cycle? What it would mean in terms of picking up on one of our offensive opportunities?
Right. Texas is going to be central to picking up that Senate majority, which is necessary. We've all seen the actions President Trump has taken just in the past few days, the past few weeks, sending federal troops into major American cities, enriching himself with his public office. This should be a five-alarm fire to anyone who loves this country, to anyone who loves and is committed to the American experiment. But we won't be able to hold Donald Trump accountable in the second half of his term. And we won't be able to hold him accountable if he attempts to run for a third term, which is a clear violation of the Constitution. So this is existential. We have got to win a Senate majority if we hope to continue this American experiment into the future and pass it on to future generations. And Texas is going to be the game changer in that fight. Obviously, we've got great pickup opportunities in North Carolina and in Maine, maybe even in Ohio or Iowa. But Texas is right up there in that list. And I think Texas will be the difference between having a majority and not having a majority in the US Senate. So this is going to be the race. This is going to be the race of the cycle. And we're going to need everyone's help. Obviously, Texans are fired up to change the direction of our state and change the politics of our state. But we're going to need our friends and our allies in other states to help us in this effort.
Can you talk a little bit about, besides the issues of democracy, which of course are important, and that's reflected not just in these obvious conversations, but also in the polling itself? What else is driving you? Like, Why do you want to go to the U.S. Senate? What do you wake up every day thinking about you'd like to change?
Well, as you know, Brian, before I was a politician, I was a public school teacher. So I saw firsthand how these systems, not just an education system that's unjust and unfair, but also a broken healthcare system, a broken criminal justice system. All of these things conspired to hold my students back on the west side of San Antonio, one of the poorest zip codes in the state of Texas. I started my life as the son of a single mom who worked overtime at a hotel to provide for me and give me a better life. So the reason I ran for office back in 2018 was to fight for working people like my mom, like my students. And that's exactly why I'm running for this US Senate seat. That big, ugly bill that passed through the US Senate just a few weeks ago. By the way, John Cornyn, our US Senator, who may be my opponent in this race, was the deciding vote on that big, ugly bill, literally kicking millions of Texans off their health care, taking food out of the mouths of millions of Texas children to fund tax breaks for himself and his billionaire friends. And so again, when I say politics is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom, this is what I'm talking about. We all working people, regardless of your ideological perspective, we all have way more in common than the people at the top want us to think. They deliberately divide us by race, by gender, by religion, by culture to keep us from seeing all that we have in common, to keep us from coming together and taking power back for ourselves and our communities. And so that's what I want to do in this campaign. I want to bring people together because in an age of division and tribalism and partisan rancor, the most radical thing you can do, the most subversive thing you can do is bring people together, is convince people of our unity because that unity is a threat to the people in power. And so this entire campaign is going to be by, of, and for working people in Texas. And if people around the country want to be a part of this movement, we could absolutely use their help.
And finally, let's finish off with this. What would your message be to those Trump voters, to those independent voters, to those disaffected voters who didn't even show up to vote in this last election cycle? What's your message to them? If they could hear one thing from you as we get in, as we head toward 2026, what would you say?
I have a lot of family members who voted for Donald Trump. I have a lot of family members who didn't vote at all. And so I've spent a lot of time hearing from them. And the thing I always try to do first is listen. Our media system encourages a lot of talking, like I'm doing right now. But when I'm on the ground and I'm talking with voters, I'm listening first. And the thing I often hear is, yeah, we don't like how Donald Trump acts. We really hate what he's done to our politics, the vitriol and the blood sport. But he doesn't talk like a regular politician, and at least he says what's on his mind. And so I understand that impulse. I hope we've seen that Donald Trump wasn't interested in draining the swamp. He wasn't interested in cleaning up government. He wasn't interested in helping you or your family or your community. And I want you to know that if you're feeling disaffected, if you're feeling disillusioned, you have a home in this campaign because we are going to take that disillusionment and we're going to channel it to transforming this broken political system in Texas and across America. And so I want you to be with me. And regardless of your feelings about any particular politician or particular policy, if you want to change this broken system, I want you to join us.
Awesome. Well, I will again put the link to your website right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. James, congratulations. We've been speaking for years and years and years, so I could not be more excited about this campaign. I could not be more excited about what this campaign represents. You deserve it. You've been working your ass off for years to make sure that people know who you are and what you stand for, and you've gained fans from the far left to even on the right. So I'm very excited to see what this campaign does, and I'll be looking forward to speaking to you more as you continue to crisscross the state. So with that said, thank you for the time today. Congratulations on the announcement and best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you, my friend.